furry torpedo to the jugular. This is Honey Badger Radio, radio with bite.
Hello and welcome to Honey Badger Radio. I'm Allison Tiemann, your host, and with me today is Hannah Wallen, Rachel Edwards, Crystal Garcia, Karen Strawn, and Janet Bloomfield. Today's topic is Elliot Roger. Elliot Roger is killed 7 individuals, 5 men, including himself, and 2 women. And the mainstream media is currently busy trying to paint him as the poster child for men's rights. Now, before we get into that topic, Janet has something pretty important or pretty big to talk about, a big plug that happened recently to her. So I'm going to pull her on and get her to tell us all about it. Come on, Janet.
Oh my goodness, you could have warned me. Okay, the word we're searching for here is incompetence. I've tried to come up with an oversight or scatterbrained or no, the word we're looking for is incompetence. Okay, I set up an email address to deal with some issues with the conference that's happening in Detroit. It is fucking happening. Haters, line up behind me and kiss my ass. This conference is happening.
Just a second, Janet. For everybody who doesn't know, Janet is talking about the Voice for Men men's rights conference that's on in Detroit. I believe it's correct me if I'm wrong, if anybody has better information, it's on the 26th, the 27th, and the 28th.
That's correct. The 26th will be a press conference, which Suzanne Venker and Dr. Helen Smith, as long as all of our presenters, will be participating in. And the conference itself starts on the 27th and the 28th. So we do have a bunch of spoiled, white, rich college girls who are trying to shut this down because obviously talking with Senator Ann Cools, the longest-serving member of the Canadian Senate, who happens to be a black woman as well, is clearly hate speech. But okay, whatever. I set up this email address to deal with some conference issues, which I then just procrastinated on forever, despite the fact that Dean sent me emails every day. I just left it. And I popped that email open today and discovered that a thought catalog piece that I had sent out from that email address had actually been published. Now, I had included a number of links and references to sources to support the assertions that I was making, obviously including my own, but most prominently A Voice for Men. All of those links had been stripped out, so none of us were actually aware that the thought catalog piece had happened until I opened the email today. Which again, it's incompetence. I'm not even going to try and deny it. So it turns out that there's well over 200 comments, and I received a personal email from the publisher of Thought Catalog to say that he thought the dialogue was probably one of the most interesting ones he'd ever seen surrounding gender on Thought Catalog. So I think that's very telling. That's interesting that there were multiple points of view there. I think for those of us who are well versed in the issues that we're dealing with, those comments seemed possibly not that great. But for a mainstream media source, they were pretty terrific, and they're continuing now. But to get published by Thought Catalog, which is a mainstream media organization, in a way that's not completely hateful and negative, I think that's a great accomplishment, and we should all be kind of standing up and cheering. And they stripped out all the links, which makes it seem like these are all my thoughts, and they simply burst from my forehead like Athena being birthed by Zeus. It's not true. I'm so sad they took the links out, because obviously I didn't come to all of this by myself. I mean, all of these thoughts were germinated, and I looked for proof, and I looked for evidence, and I came across all these really fantastic resources that are on the internet, that are just out there, and Thought Catalog very erroneously makes it seem like I just came up with it myself. It's not true. That obviously, come on, how could I simply understand custody laws without having an enormous number of resources behind me? So it's a great accomplishment in one sense that at least they're publishing something positive about us. And it's like oh, dude, come on, you failed us so bad here because you didn't link to all the ways I came to understand what I know. And I am not the only blogger, writer, woman, person.
Hello?
Oh,
is this dead air? Are we experiencing dead air, James?
As far as I can tell.
No,
okay.
we're not dead. We're live. It's just Doji dropped somehow.
All right. Well, it probably is a connection. Up in Canada, we use squirrels to run our internet connection. So
yeah, they run on wheels, and I guess she didn't give them enough nuts.
Enough acorns. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
But it is actually a pretty incredible accomplishment to get up on Thought Catalog. It is, I believe, ranks 600 in Alexa. So that's pretty high up in terms of internet rankings. And unlike Judgy Bitch, I'm not going to downplay the fact that, her accomplishment in actually getting her piece in Thought Catalog. After all, she compiled it and she wrote it in a compelling way. But anyway, we should all pat ourselves on the back for that one, for putting forth some interesting ideas and give kudos where kudos are due. That Judgy put them collated them in a way that was the mainstream found compelling. But let's move on to the topic of our show tonight. I'm going to hand the mic over to Rachel, who's going to give us a bit of an overview. So go ahead, Rachel.
Thank you, Hannah. Oh, not Hannah. Oh, sorry. Gosh. Social justice warriors use Killing Rampage as a platform. On May 23rd, 2014, Elliot Roger went on a killing spree. He began by stabbing his 3 roommates to death in his apartment before making his way to the Alpha Phi sorority house at the University of California, shooting the people he found outside. He continued on in his car, shooting bystanders and those he recognized as students. He was later found dead in his car from a self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head. As a result, 7 people lost their lives, including Roger himself. 13 others were injured. We are left asking why this happened, as we always are. Even now, as we grieve, people have decided to use this attack as a platform to aid their causes. They use this moment to manipulate and benefit from the casualties. Some media sources are using this attack to push gun control laws, while others are using it to paint men's rights activists as terrorists. It's clear that these people will stop at nothing to push an agenda. Insulting men's rights activists is one thing, but to hoist yourself up on the bodies of the dead is disgusting. It doesn't matter to these people that Elliot Roger killed mostly men, that he'd never been an MRA, or that his guns were purchased legally. It doesn't matter that 20 families are in agony now, or that 7 of them are mourning the loss of their children. Because for these individuals, their agenda is more important than the pain they might inflict upon others. These people are not tools to further an agenda. This should be a time of grieving and reflection. It is a time for families to think about the lives of the children they lost all too soon.
That's certainly true. And it takes a special kind of person to essentially turn the bodies of these men into a podium so that they can wave around the bodies of these women like a ghoulish trophy and say, this is men's rights. Look at this. This is men's rights. What do you say to a tragedy like this, really? And what do you say to the callous exploitation of the victims of this tragedy? It's pretty much beyond words. One of the things that I find interesting is that they blame the men's rights movement for this, but did school shootings start? I mean, when did these kind of mass shootings start? I think they will continue to go on. They will continue to occur. These tragedies will continue to happen, and they would happen whether or not there's a men's rights movement, because it has nothing at all to do with the men's rights movement. In fact, I would say that the men's rights movement would actually offer a possible solution to the kind of social pressures that lead to these tragedies. And Hannah Wallen just informs me in our chat that there have been school shootings clear back into the 19th century, which sort of supports my point. There have been shootings for centuries, and until we actually figure out why, and not just look at these tragedies in terms of beating our ideological drums, they will continue. And that's pretty much all I have to say about that. Does anyone else want to step into the silence? I know it's an intimidating silence.
Well,
go on, Judgy.
Sorry, it's Judgy. I was just thinking about Valerie Solanas. I mean, this is someone who was a self-proclaimed feminist, who decided that the solution to all of her problems was not herself, but was to actually go and shoot Andy Warhol. And I have a hard time figuring. No one in the media seems to think that this is indicative of a large problem with feminism. It's simply an individual who had some serious mental health issues. Why is Elliot Rogers different? I mean, I don't want to deny his misogyny. I think that's a mistake. He was absolutely misogynistic, but let's broaden it. He was just as misandrist. He fantasized about killing all men. The word for that is misanthropy. He hated everyone. Why are women being held up as special victims? That's what I don't get. He hated everyone. He killed more men than women. I mean, this is a person who was deeply disturbed, who hated men as much as he hated women. I don't think that pointing out that he hated men as much as he hated women in any way detracts from the obvious pain of the loss of the families of the women, but the loss of the families of the men is just as important. I mean, this guy hated everyone, including himself. Is there anyone on the list that he didn't hate? It's craziness.
Yeah, I'm really disgusted about all of the media really surrounding this. It's insane. I mean, I've seen everything from people saying it was 6 women that died to people attributing this to medication he was on, or just a wide range of crazy things, everything but what they should be talking about, and that is mental health. And I've actually read somebody say something to the extent of, if you say it was mental health, that is being bigoted against people with mental health issues. That doesn't excuse the fact that this guy was severely disturbed, and nobody was watching for him. Nobody had this even on their radar. I mean, I think they understood that there was something wrong with him, but I don't know if they understood to what extent that was. And
Rachel, I just need to interject. Actually, his parents tried to get him help repeatedly.
Yeah, okay.
And they either failed or the help just wasn't sufficient to deal with his problems.
Police got involved.
Yeah.
His parents and his team of therapists. He had a team of therapists hired by his parents.
Yeah.
They both spoke to the police. The police went and talked to him. They did not have sufficient cause. They did not have probable cause to enter his living space. And he did not invite them in, and they did not have a warrant, right? So there was no way. If they had gone in and searched the place, they would have found his weapons, they would have found his written down plan, they would have found his 4,000 or so rounds of ammunition, right? They would have found all of that. But they were not able to do that because of the presumption of innocence and due process and all of those things that we really value and we should value. So it really, and he was very convincing. He was very, very convincing. The police came away and told his parents that he was a polite, kind, and wonderful young man. So, you can't blame this on nobody noticing, per se, or nobody trying to deal with it. As far as I am aware, he has been in treatment for mental problems since he was 8 years old, right? Oh. So, he definitely, people knew and people were trying to get him help, right? The big problem is the inclination of feminists to say mental illness is not a problem in this case. It's not the reason. It has nothing to do with it. It's all cultural misogyny. He was just a garden variety misogynist on steroids, and he was an active MRA. He was active in the MRM, right? And all of that is just absolutely absurd, and it's ridiculous, right? So, yeah. Go ahead,
I just want to briefly speak to the active in the MRM. He didn't post on any men's rights sites. He didn't talk about men's rights. He didn't do anything in relation to men's rights.
Nothing.
I mean, nothing. There's absolutely no relationship. As one person put it, it's like calling a feminist, lumping in pickup artists and men's rights activists is like lumping in strippers and feminists. And he wasn't even a pickup artist. And I apologize for stepping into your space there, Crystal, and I'm going to cede the floor to you. Go ahead.
Okay. It's become quite a freak show out there with what feminists are doing. Good Men Project is out of control with it. I've seen people, they're writing these articles and creating these videos and taking their personal story and bringing it to this tragedy and making it about them. It's really disgusting and so self-absorbed to come into someone else's tragedy and say this is all about me, and then to go use that and say this is all about me and all men, yada yada yada. It's really become a freaking circus out there. It's really disgusting, and this is so low. For these feminists, they're not even trying to pretend like some of them say they do, but it's horse crap that they actually care about even the women they're talking about. They don't, and they completely dismiss the men that died. It's so outrageous. I've been on Twitter with this yes all women nonsense, which is completely it's just pure. They're in vulture mode is the only way I can say it. And I tweeted yes all women because someone else's tragedy is all about me, speaking in there. And someone actually responded, but it is about me. I'm like, holy crap. And they don't even see that's something disturbing. They don't even see that there's something wrong with that. And then for them to go on and say, this is all men. And then this pisses me off the worst. When they say, well, we're not saying all men, but we're saying too many. And I'm like, it's so hateful. It's so purely hateful. And the way they've turned this tragedy into an attack on men is, it's just so vile. It's really so vile.
Well, it's not just, to be honest, there is one benefit to this that they're blaming the men's rights movement, and that is they're no longer blaming men as a whole, because that's what they used to do. Now they're blaming the men's rights movement, which is in some ways a step forward. But another thing that's really interesting about, if you read what he has to say, a lot of it is the polar opposite of what he would have found if he actually came in contact with the men's rights movement.
Right.
This guy revolves his entire life around attention from women and getting approval from women. That's this was the center of his being. And if he had actually encountered the men's rights movement, as Dr. Randamer Kam said in his video, I think it was trigger warning. This is what a trigger warning looks like, Elliot Roger. If he had actually encountered the men's rights movement would have spoken the exact opposite of what he was talking about. Don't center your value. Don't center your sense of self on approval of women, or at least try to minimize and try to at least diversify your sense of self-worth away from being solely based on the approval of women or even the approval of other men. And that is the exact opposite of what he was saying in his manifesto. He was actually writing an anti-men's rights activism manifesto. His entire concept of the world was that men only existed to be obstacles to him, and that the only worth in the world was getting approval from women, and men were utterly expendable in his worldview. All of that is the opposite of what men's rights is about, which is about bringing compassion to men and boys and seeing them as human beings, not just human doings, as Warren Farrell would say, but as human beings that are valued and have value in and of themselves. Now, that doesn't preclude earning more value by having excellence or pursuing excellence, but just to have value for being human, for being a human, experiencing the world as a human. And that's totally opposite of his conception of the world. And I think that if you set the entire population of men up to value themselves in terms of getting attention from women, of getting value from women, of getting approval from women, and that's their only value, you've essentially given them nothing to lose when they don't have it. That's it, that you're making human time bombs. All you have to do is add a psychosis or a mental illness, and you have constructed a human time bomb. And it's not a surprise that there's a very vanishingly small, greater chance of being hit by lightning, vanishingly small number of men who turn into these human time bombs. It's a combination of being told all their lives that their only value is through approval from women, and then they don't get that value, so they have nothing to lose, and then also a psychosis or narcissism or a psychotic mental illness that allows them to forego the natural humanity of men and women to enact incredible acts of violence upon others. And it's not a surprise when we tell men and boys that they're so valueless that we do create these walking time bombs. And I would say that for every one Elliot Roger, there are thousands upon thousands of men and boys who simply kill themselves. This is like an epidemic of men and boys who kill themselves because of the system of not valuing men unless they have women's approval. And we don't care. We don't care we don't care unless it hurts a woman. Anyway, I'm going to cede the floor to Rachel. Go ahead.
It really is very, very disheartening, because as we sit here in this wave of hurtful comments coming in, it lets us really know where we stand with a good portion of the population. Because here are these people who are profoundly selfish, like Crystal said, and really the focus should be on these people, the families of these people that we lost, because one lone psycho went and decided to go kill a bunch of people and take out his anguish on other people. And instead of focusing on that, they choose to think about themselves and spew hate upon, the men's rights movement, men in general, and just say, well, it's all about us. And it's disheartening for everybody in this movement, because we here, I think, on some level, want to have faith that there are people out there who aren't really as bad as we think. And here they are, just spewing this hate forth, creating these petitions, posts everywhere, trying to pin all of this on us. Instead of what it is. It's a single person who was deeply disturbed. And that's what we need to remember going into this. And instead of focusing on that, they've gone in every tangent instead of the one that they should. And words cannot express just how deeply saddened I am that anything like this happened. And my heart really goes out to the families of these people who are just left wondering why. I'm done.
It certainly is incredibly, horribly tragic that this happened, and it's no matter what reason or what was going on inside him, it does not change how tragic it is for as far as reality is concerned. It's really sick that the motivation behind it changes for feminists and other social justice warriors, how tragic this is. And that is, it's consistent with previous behavior on their part. And I remember when the bombing at the Boston Marathon occurred, and I was reading blogs about it because of all things, it's a bombing, but it started a discussion on gun control because obviously gun control will stop people from bombing things. In any case, there were blogs I read with social justice warriors, particularly left-wing social justice warriors, salivating, absolutely flat out, just begging for it to be a conservative white male. And it was like gleeful. Oh God, I hope this was a conservative white guy. Oh God, I hope we get to tie this to conservatism. And for the idea that maybe there was suffering and that the victims that died in terrible pain, and that the victims that survived experienced and will never forget the terrible pain of having limbs blown off and are going to have to recover and learn how to operate without those limbs. That was nothing to them compared to the idea that, oh God, I want to be able to tie this to the people I want to criticize. And it was disgusting. And I'm seeing exactly the same thing to the letter with this Yes All Women campaign. Oh God, we have to tie this to the men's rights movement. First, we got to call him a pickup artist, and then we got to say that men's rights activists are pickup artists, and then we can use this, we can exploit this to take down the whole men's rights movement. And it's obvious that that's what they're doing, because as soon as you start talking in that hashtag conversation about anything other than the idea that all women everywhere suffer a constant barrage of harassment and violence from all men everywhere. And as soon as you start bringing up points that maybe things are not quite that polarized, there's just this absolute deluge of angry feminists, men and women, who will descend upon you with ridiculous statements. I actually had one of them tell me that feminism was responsible for my long hair. She got so hysterical in the midst of the discussion that she told me I couldn't have long hair without feminism. I am not kidding. I have long hair.
Shit.
I have long hair because I eat things that are high in biotin and other vitamins. But yes, feminism did that for me. They probably created biotin.
You have long hair because you are a dupe of the patriarchy, and you're trying to attract random men with your beautiful hair.
Oh yeah, the last time I attracted a random man with my hair, 2 women came up and yelled at me for letting him touch it.
Oh my
He
God.
was a sweet little old man. He came up and he said, "Your hair is so pretty." And he just reached out and flipped it with his fingers. And I stood, just really, it was adorable and sweet. And
that's not
huge
adorable.
big smile on my face.
That
And
was
oh my
assault.
God, they was,
That was
they
That's
went
assault.
ballistic.
That's assault,
was
Hannah.
assault.
You were
Oh my God.
assaulted.
How dare
Yeah.
he enjoy himself?
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
You-
that
how
was
dare
that
assault.
was that was the diatribe I got, and I'm
You're
enabling men everywhere to assault women everywhere by letting some poor little old guy who never probably hurt a fly in his whole life touch my hair. And that's the kind of attitude I'm seeing with this. It's just how can we exploit this? And no consideration whatsoever for the people that are involved. No consideration for the victims, no consideration for their families, no consideration for their classmates. No. How can we make this about us? And how can we use it against our enemies? And it's been very deliberate. And it's been very targeted. And it's been very sloppy. I mean, everything they've said about him is directly contradicted by the evidence available about him. But that's pretty consistent with the way feminists have approached the men's rights movement anyway. Everything they say about us is directly contradicted by the information that we have put out there about ourselves. Everything that we've said, everything that we've done. So that's really all they have. They can't argue with the facts. They cannot counter the movement, and they cannot counter the reality that contradicts their fantasy that they've created. And so they have to come up with all these straw men, and they have to be this melodramatic that they would exploit a terrible, gut-wrenching tragedy, just callously exploit it as political fodder.
What I find... Sorry, am I okay to speak?
Well, I was just going to say what I found amazing was that there was a thread on the subreddit Are Men's Rights that was dealing with the fact that men's rights has been accused, the MRM has been accused of creating this person, of influencing him. He was called an active men's rights activist, in various mainstream publications. Right. And we were having this huge discussion thread, basically saying, yeah, no, he wasn't. Right. Like, we'd never heard of him. For everything that we can tell, he'd never heard of us. Right. And we actually had people in that thread accusing us of trying to hijack this tragedy for our own ends, because we were defending ourselves against slander, right? We were defending ourselves against accusations that we had created this person, right? And that was considered hijacking the tragedy for our political gain, right? So even defending ourselves against slander is considered having an agenda or hijacking a tragedy. It's completely, like, I have never encountered as much projection in my life as I have had, as I have encountered in my 4 years of picking apart feminism and talking with feminists. Ever, right? Everything that they accuse us of, it seems they are the ones who seem to be doing exactly that, right? It's like a massive case of psychological projection.
That's very true. That is astounding. I think you and Hannah win the award for the feminists say the darndest things. Hannah has long hair because of feminism, and we are the ones who are hijacking a tragedy to push an agenda.
Oh, don't forget the one about it being ableist to say that he was mentally ill.
Oh yeah.
Oh right.
Right. Yeah, we can't point out that he was mentally ill because it stigmatizes the mentally ill, but
we can point out that he's a man and white.
Well,
right. Yeah,
Rachel has some more on that, but before we go to our music break, I just want to announce that this is a call-in show, so please do call in. The number is 214-666-6148. We want to hear your thoughts on Elliot Roger and the situation and how certain individuals and certain groups have been shamelessly exploiting it to further their agenda of painting the men's rights movement as a bunch of misogynists. I know that I am definitely a neckbeard, misogynist man living in my mother's basement. I don't know about the rest of the cast on Honey Badger Radio.
I've never been laid. Ever.
Amazing that you've had 3 children.
I'm a 400-pound man.
I'm Paul Elam.
I have Cheeto stains on my T-shirt.
I'm a sock puppet account.
I'm Paul Elam because I can't be a black Puerto Rican female in the men's human rights movement. It's not possible. So apparently Paul Elam created me. I'm just an android.
I am my own white.
Built in his basement.
I have internalized misogyny.
Yes, I'm a pickup artist here to pick up all the Puerto Rican internalized misogynists.
I am a labia trader, and John the Other is whispering in my ear as we speak.
You'll do too. You're all right.
I'm a traditionalist, and I've spent far too long away from the kitchen. I should be making sandwiches right now.
Oh yes.
Are you out of the kitchen?
And I'm a liberal, depending on who you talk to and which position I've argued.
We all did this for the harem that we received, right? That's why we did this, because apparently we were
did it for the long hair. I did it for the long hair.
Okay, ladies, you need to read Sheryl Sandberg because I got a raise today. I got a 10,000% raise on my salary. I demanded it. You need to increase my salary by 10,000%.
How did you do it? Were you bossy?
No, my salary is 0, and they just don't understand math. They don't get it. They agreed, and here I am triumphing with a 10,000 increase on my salary.
Of 0.
Of 0.
Okay. We are in the silly place, but we have to move out of the silly place for a show announcement. We have a very important update on the reward offered by men's rights activist groups to find and bring to justice Danielle d'Etremont's attacker. For those who don't know, Danielle d'Etremont was attacked prior to Janice Fiamengo's lecture on men's issues in Toronto. Please, anybody correct me if I'm wrong. She said that prior to being attacked, she had received threats from a men's rights activist. These are all alleged. The threats haven't been produced. But we have offered a reward for anyone leading to information on this person. First, before I get into details on the update of the reward, I'm going to quote from feminist Courtney Cadwell's article, quote, Alpha Male Elliot Roger's Retribution, published on skepchick.org. Quote, this is hardly the first time that men's rights movement or rhetoric, alpha male, come on, have been linked to physical violence against women. Earlier this year, a young woman named Danielle d'Etremont was beaten by a man on her campus. Her attack came shortly after she stated she received threats because she showed support for feminist activities on campus. We at Honey Badger Radio are pleased to announce that men's rights groups and individual MRAs have, over the last few weeks, pledged an additional $6,000 for any information leading to the arrest and conviction of any MRA who is found to have assaulted Danielle d'Etremont. This brings the total to $10,500 raised by men's rights organizations to see justice done in regards to Danielle d'Etremont. This additional monies will only be available for 12 months, after which they will be reallocated or reverted to the donors. We are implementing a time limit because everyone, including Danielle and her alleged attacker, is entitled to speedy justice. To this date, no feminist organization has stepped up to offer any additional cash to find Danielle D'Etremont's attacker. I'm not alone as a men's rights activist in stating if we do find the person, allegedly a man, responsible for attacking Danielle D'Etremont, I am adamant that he be punished to the fullest extent of the law, especially if he's a men's rights activist. We in the men's rights community are very invested in identifying anyone in our ranks who engages in or advocates violence and ejecting them post-haste and with extreme prejudice. Inciting or engaging in violence is not what the men's rights movement is about. If you're guilty of either, our entire community will come down on you like 60 tons of fucking brick. As always, we invite feminists to add to the reward we are offering to find Danielle D'Etremont's attacker and help us make society safe for freedom of expression for all people, even those who object to us. Now, and does anyone want to add to that before we go to our music interlude?
Well, it's it's pretty typical that something like that would be on skepchick.org, knowing that it's Rebecca Watson's hug box, her echo chamber, elevator gate lady, for those of you at home who know what I'm talking about.
The woman who claimed that skeptical people and people who don't want to hear about feminism are worse than people who threaten to rape her.
Yeah, rape threats, basically. Yeah. She's pretty terrible. She's skeptical, supposedly skeptical about everything, but the thing that's most important to her, which is feminism. Sounds like a pretty shitty skeptic to me.
That's the entirety of free thought blogs and skeptic atheism. Plus, skeptical about everything except feminism.
God, I hate those guys.
Don't we all? So, on that note, let's go into a music break, I think.
No, actually, I've gotten an update. We're going to take a call.
Okay.
James.
Ooh, a caller!
Yeah, a caller. We're going to bring him on into the den of lions.
Yeah, we're gonna go ahead and transfer over David this time.
David?
Dave.
Yeah.
Welcome to the show.
Hey, I'm happy to be here. Really, I am.
Hey.
Welcome.
Hey, girls, how you doing?
We're good.
Can I call you girls?
Yes, you can.
Yeah.
Hey, my name.
Don't call us late for dinner.
Shame on you for infantilizing us in that way.
Oh.
You should go stab yourself in the eye with a pencil right now.
Don't say that. You might actually do it.
Can I just go sit in the corner like a bad boy?
No, you don't. You don't really have to do that. Actually,
no, you just deny me the pleasure.
What to do with bad boys.
Okay, so
what do you have to say?
All right, silly place.
Okay, yeah, down to brass tacks. I mean, I am fascinated by this story. I can't deny that I knew something like this was going to happen at some point, and I'm not happy that it happened in any way, shape, or form. But it was going to happen. This is an issue. It is an issue about misogyny. It's an issue about mental illness. It's an issue about gun control, and everyone's free to talk about those things. It's an issue about a lot of things. But as far as I'm concerned, above everything else, this is an issue about the crisis of masculine identity in this country, and maybe in the West in general. That's the problem. And I'll give you a little history of myself. I'm 48 years old. I grew up in the 70s watching feminism advance over the culture, and I watched feminists of the day kind of make mincemeat of the chauvinists of that time. And pretty much by 1980, I think every man was just hiding under the bed, hiding under furniture, just waiting for this tornado to pass. And during the past 35 years, I don't think men have said much. And when you have no opposition to your voice, feminist voice, you'll just go on forever like a steamroller, and that's what's happened. And we're just at a situation now where men are really afraid to say something, and this might be the point where we plant our flags into an issue. And it's a terrible thing. There are people that are dead, victims, absolutely. But the problem here is that this young man placed his personal value as Typhon, you said earlier, he placed his valuation in the hands of women. And that's a tragic mistake. And it's also, to be fair to women, it's an unfair burden on them. We have to be our own people. Men need to find their own identity on their own. And until we do that, things like this are going to happen. Because it's totally, it's just wrong. I don't know. I'm at a loss for words, especially since no one's saying anything in response.
Okay. Well, I think it's because we agree. I don't.
Oh well, here we go. Yeah, next call, please. Yeah.
Okay.
But I know Janet has something to say, so go ahead, Judgy.
I would say agree, but with some caveats. I mean, I think that we can understand that Elliot Rogers, he displayed some unmistakable, undeniable misogyny, hatred of women. He also, at the exact same time, displayed some undeniable hatred of men, misandry, which included himself. And that's really the hard part for any guy, right? Like, how can you hate who you are? How can you hate who you are?
It's really dangerous to say that I identify with someone like Elliot Roger, but in this small way, I do. And any man who is honest with himself, to say something like this would probably say the same thing. There are times on a Saturday night when you're all by yourself and you're walking down the street and you see all these couples all together, all enjoying their lives, and you say to yourself, what a friggin' loser I am. Right? I have nobody. Mm-hmm. And every man, unless he is the big man on campus, every man has had a night like that. And some men have a lot of them. And some men, every man has. What?
This is not new. This is something that Jane Austen wrote about in her novels 200 years ago, that men have the power of choice and women have the power of refusal. And that is an enormous power. And what the real problem is that we're not addressing the fact that, number one, in our culture, men are expected to make the first move sexually. That's just refute it. Please bring me the stats to refute it. It's irrefutable. And secondly, that how is it that we can pretend that men and women are equal when men are always charged with the emotional burden of moving first? That means the emotional burden of being rejected. And that is what we don't like to talk about. What is that burden? We force men to move first romantically. If you are interested in a woman, it is your job to go out there and pursue her. And if she rejects you, and if those rejections pile up and pile up and pile up, is that because you're a fucking dickhead, loser, douchebag of a guy? Or because maybe that situation is not really that fair? And nobody wants to talk about that.
Yeah, I agree. And this is a perfect moment to bring up the whole thing about the PUAs. Okay, and this is my take on the reason why PUA gurus and websites and message boards exist. The fact is that girls, even before they reach puberty, are forced into a school of learning how to deal and interact with the opposite sex, whether they want it or not. It is foisted upon them because boys approach them, and boys, unless they take the initiative, never learn how to do it. They never get to school. And in my own life, I'm going to use an analogy. I suck at basketball. I never learned how to play as a kid, as a teenager, as a young adult. And at my age now, my buds get together and say, hey, you want to play some basketball? I invent a convenient excuse because the appearance of me not being so inept at basketball it would be devastatingly embarrassing. You just imagine being some guy in his mid-20s, mid-30s who never approached a girl successfully. The lack of confidence, the awkwardness. That's why PUA sites exist. It's not to get laid. It's to find validation through women. That's why they're there. I mean, yeah, the guys, the mystery with the purple hat and all that stuff, they sell a scene. They sell a thing about getting chicks and stuff. But the guys who go to it are so socially inept and afraid of women. They're just looking to connect. They're looking for a relationship. They're not looking to, hey, babes, and get a new one every night. That's the PUA thing. And that's the only thing you can, and you've said it already, the only tangential connection to the MRM. It's, well, you women are doing a great job with this thing, tackling it. And the other thing I wanted to say, and I know there's thousands of calls, but the truth, I always believe that the truth will out itself. It may take a long time. It may be a long run. But I am firmly convinced that the McCarthy moment for feminism is coming. You know, that at long last have you no shame incident, that is coming. And you women are doing a great job of making it more likely to happen.
You know, truth is the universal solvent. There really is nothing that can stand against it. And I agree. I think that with what you're saying, the idea that men, it's like a double whammy. Not only is there a drive to, you know, go out and find a partner, a life partner, but there's also this expectation in our society that men take their sense of self, their sense of self-worth from women's approval. And personally, I think if we can somehow figure out a way to lessen that, but the reality is that if we do lessen that, a lot of people, particularly the powers that be, that fund feminism, that have used feminism as their sock puppet, essentially, or feminism has used them as their sock puppet, whichever the power, it doesn't really matter, they stand to lose a lot of power over men. And I think they also stand to lose a lot of power over women. Because when men are no longer defined by women's approval, women aren't as defined by getting attention from men. I think it's a dynamic. It's a dynamic there, and we could really liberate each other from this ridiculous situation. And thank you for your call, Dave.
Just one other thing real quick. The solution for this is going to come from the formation of a sense of fraternity among men. This is the only way it's going to happen. And, whether the ultimate manifestation of that is the MRM, or maybe it's just through the MRM, that has to happen. And this whole incident and the response to it from the mainstream media and feminists at large underscores the reason why there needs to be an MRM. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you for coming on. And go ahead, Rachel.
Take care, girl.
Yeah, you too. Go ahead, Rachel.
I wanted to add about this because they're talking about approval from women. I think it goes beyond that with Elliot Roger, because I think towards the end, as really these feelings escalated, he began to really hate sex. Even the concept of sex he hated, because he felt that it had way too much power over him. And I remember Judgy Bitch was talking about Valerie Solanas and how she shot Andy Warhol. The things that she said to the police when she turned herself in was, "I shot Andy Warhol because he had too much power over my life." And that's how. Yeah, exactly. And I'm not going to say that there's a connection. I'm saying it's that kind of crazy mindset that really sends these things into effect. It's that kind of mindset saying, well, it's that narcissism where you're sitting there and you're saying, this has too much power over my life, I'm just going to go get rid of it. Mm-hmm. Whether it's a person or it's a thing, he had these elaborate fantasies where he talked about destroying all men and all women and all and everything because they had way too much power over him.
Yeah, Well, it's just bringing back to Janet's point earlier. It's interesting how Valerie Solanas doesn't say anything about feminism, and I'd actually agree. She was a deranged individual. Even toxic ideologies usually require a deranged individual to act them out, or a society in absolute anguish. But this kid, or this young man, who wasn't even a men's rights activist, totally defines our movement. It's pretty, the logic is pretty astounding. But let's go to the music break now. We're going to be playing Circus Tiger by Bare Minimum. Could you cue that up, James?
But the problem is, we see that when human beings have a sense of righteousness, it often leads to engage in incredibly destructive behaviors. Because when you're pretty sure you're right, it's very, very easy to engage in activity that undermines other people or the larger world.
You fucking lost and just behave. Something so tense in this cage. Just keep your feelings between the words. Gonna roll without being heard. And the outcome with different age. And the outcome with different page. Prison I'm done for. Yeah, I know I'm playing. Prison I'm done for, but I don't know how to change. Close my eyes and just pretend. Those bonds are twins, so one day bend. All crowded room, the wave is lies. Waves coming words and consensus eyes. And the outcome from a different age. And the outcome from a different page. Pressure I'm done for. Don't wanna complain. Pressure I'm done for now, and I'm feeling shame.
And we're back. Welcome back. Tonight's topic is Elliot Roger and how the mainstream media has painted him as the poster child or poster boy for the men's rights movement, even though he had absolutely no involvement in our movement, and his manifesto, if you could call it such, was in diametric opposition to most men's rights concepts. So we're going to take another caller. The caller's name is Mickey. James, can you bring Mickey on?
Yeah, give me just 1 minute to make that transfer.
Yeah, let's have some elevator music. Rachel, sing us a song.
Oh, the rain, you came and you gave without taking.
Okay, we should have Mickey on the line. At least I hope we do.
Hi.
Hi.
Yeah, I thought we lived in a rape culture, right? Where's the rape? Elliot was a product of his culture. He's the poster boy of all of misogyny, right? Misogynistic culture, and that's a rape culture. And he wanted sex very badly. He had a very high sex drive. So why didn't he rape someone? I mean, this is really weird. Like, the whole narrative is changing now. It's like it's not about rape anymore. It's about killing. And there are no accusations that he was a rapist. There's no accusations of any kind of sexual assault at all. And if anything, he was allies with radical feminists who say that all sex is rape because he wanted to abolish sex. Right? If all sex is rape, that means it should be abolished. So he was clearly allies with radical feminists in that way. So this is very, very strange to me, and I'm sort of confused. Like, what's the explanation here? Why?
Well, okay.
How is he not?
you can't call him an ally of radical feminism because he's a man, and therefore he has no right to declare sex one thing or another. Sex is the purview. It is under the aegis of radical feminism, of generally trans exclusive radical feminists who are all women-born women, and they get to dictate what sex is and what it isn't. And so Elliot Roger had no right to have an opinion on sex one way or another. But, like, you bring up something that I've been waiting for someone in our movement to address, right, regarding Elliot Roger. Like, we have all these feminists blaming it on men, men objectifying women, men's feelings of entitlement to women's bodies, and Roger talked ad nauseum about wanting a woman to desire and love him. That's something no object can do, right? If he did see women as objects to have sex with, and if he did feel entitled to their bodies, he wouldn't be a 22-year-old virgin. He'd be a 22-year-old rapist, right?
Yeah.
You know, like, but one of the another of the things that I have been waiting for, because you have skeptics and atheists weighing in on this as well, the Justicar on sort of aligned with our side, and the people at Free Thought Blogs and Skepchick on the opposing side. Nobody, even the amazing atheist, nobody has talked about the role that the book The Secret might have played in entrenching his mental illness. His father bought him that book to give him a more positive outlook on life, and he ended up believing he could get whatever he wanted just by wanting it hard enough. He blew $5,000 of his savings in lottery tickets, believing that he would win the jackpot if he just practiced the law of attraction, right? And no skeptics have anything to say about how a book that promotes magical thinking and validates delusions of reference might have reinforced his feelings of being entitled to things he shouldn't feel entitled to. They haven't said anything about a book marketed on the premise that this is the secret to success that rich people don't want you to know about, and how that might feed into a persecution complex in a personality disordered individual. Like, literally, promoting the idea that like attracts like through the power of will or thought might lead him to believe that if women are fucking bad men, that women are bad as well, or that if women will not fuck good men like him, that women are not good, because that's how the law of attraction works. I mean, like, or that maybe somehow the universe is intentionally preventing him from being successful with women. I mean, literally, this is a book that is so intensely geared towards feeding all of the delusional traits of people with personality disorders, right? Every single one of them listed in, borderline personality disorders, psychosis spectrum disorders, all of these things. And it's a best-selling book, right, that is not basically framed as here's a catalog of mental illness. No, it's framed as, this is real stuff.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And no it's really skeptics want to touch that because, oh my goodness, misogyny.
Yeah, and that book is really just repeating the same stuff that other self-help authors have been saying for years. Like, there's the guy who wrote The Power of Now. He talks about that stuff. Deepak Chopra, Wayne Dyer. Elliot Roger spent a lot of time at Barnes & Noble reading books, and he went to the self-help section. And these are the books that you find in the self-help section, and it's really, really sad. I went through a phase of that myself, in my early 20s when I was seeking independence. And those books really hampered that search, and they made me, what I needed was to be my own man, and there's none of that stuff in those self-help books, because they deny masculinity and the need for men to own themselves, and for people to own themselves, of course, and it's really messed up. All that stuff is messed up. Terrible.
Well, I've actually read those books, and I like Deepak Chopra, and I like Eckhart Tolle. I read The Secret. I can see how people, can really take that and run, because it really can turn into people thinking that they have a God complex and everything they can create however they want. I think the point of those books, I don't even know if it's said in those books, but is everything's kind of a co-creation. You cannot control everything in your life. You cannot say, poof, this is how everything is supposed to happen. I think for each person, different things work. For him, clearly was not the best idea. Probably his father meant the best with it, but with someone who was in the state that he already was in, may have pushed him into more. But I wouldn't say that the self-help books themselves really could create, there would have to be something there first for him to really just go off. I wouldn't say that the self-help books are bad or
I mean, they didn't turn me into a murderer. So.
Right. Well,
you're also talking about somebody who's been in treatment since 8 years old.
Right.
Yeah. So. It was, and I honestly don't think that his father had any kind of bad intentions at all. I think he had the best of intentions, like you said, in purchasing this book for his son, just to try to have a positive outlook. It just happened to be the worst possible thing.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
It's like giving a kid penicillin when they're allergic to penicillin. You think
I just want to make a point that people who are in treatment aren't necessarily also going to murder people, even if they're started treatment when they're 8.
Well, yeah,
of course not.
Of course not. But
I think
my
it's
sister.
a constellation of factors here.
Yeah. My sister, started trying to sell me on the whole power of attraction kind of stuff, and you know what? With her thinking, she's ended up homeless twice, but she doesn't see that as a failure or a bad decision-making skills. She sees it as just one means, one way to get it to the next point in her life. So she's doing, she's making really terrible decisions, but she's feeling really great about it. Yeah. That's self-help books for you.
Right.
Well, that's some self-help books.
There is definitely, it can be for, certain people that could really, I can understand how that can be it can come off as oh, wow, let's be totally flighty and can really screw some people up. I can get that, but I don't know. I don't know.
No, I agree with you, Crystal. There like anything, there's problems with self-help, and then there's also some stuff that can be very beneficial. As distinct from the concepts in The Secret, I find the concept of karma to be very beneficial. And what that says is not that you just have to wish something and it'll happen, but to look to your own behavior and constantly be improving it. And that process of improving yourself improves your experience of the world, which I think is a pretty legitimate thing to say. And I recognize that skeptics are going to have a very differing opinion on that, but for me, it works, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah. I would suggest the 6 Pillars of Self-Esteem by Nathaniel Branden, or anything by Nathaniel Branden, basically.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
We do have to move on because we've got a number of callers. And
thank you. I love Honey Badger Radio.
And we love our audience. Okay, so let's bring on Samich now, and Hannah in the silence piece.
Does that mean he's stealing our sandwiches? The sandwiches that I make in my kitchen?
Yeah. Well, he's Samich Heist, I believe.
I don't make no sandwiches, so there's no danger here.
Karen, you've never made your own sandwiches.
I don't make anybody else's sandwiches. I make all kinds of sandwiches for myself.
Sandwich is here.
Samich. Hello, Samich.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right. Yeah. The whole thing is pretty horrible. I didn't expect less of feminists to try to blame us. They always blame us for stuff left and right. But the part that I find the most infuriating about this, is I seem to remember MRAs organizing talks about suicide prevention for men, and feminists rushing in to shut down the talk and stop those, and pulling fire alarm. And now we have a crazy suicidal guy who commits a horrible mass shooting, and they blame it on us.
Yeah, it is pretty.
Ironic.
It's pretty egregious.
It's ridiculous. It's
based on their
ridiculous.
mentality. The idea that anything that helps men is helping patriarchy. So we need to, not help men. Like, we can't give services to men because somehow that will take away services to women. Or if we give attention to men, that'll take away attention from women. And it's,
their thought process is that, men are just inherently powerful and they don't need any help, and if we give them more help, it's just going to lead to oppression, to even more oppression.
It's so bad that they are actually offended at the idea of helping men. Because there's two things. There's more than one there. The first one is the vulnerability thing. Obviously, they don't want to admit that men are vulnerable. And if they admit that men are vulnerable, then they'd have to admit that maybe not all men are bad and so on. But they literally view any discussion on men's issues at all to be hijacking. It's you can't talk about any men's issues in any forum anywhere without feminists consider it hijacking the discussion. There can be no discussion taking place and a discussion start on men's issues. And if feminists are not allowed to co-opt it and turn it into feminism, you are hijacking feminist discussion. You're hijacking gender issues discussion by throwing up all this men's issues stuff. And this is a result. I don't think it's a direct result, but it is a result. This is something that, for the last several years, since the beginning of the movement, they've really done this. Just imagine for a moment if men's issues discussion had been so widespread and so mainstream and so well known that this guy would have had a plethora of well established and professionally run organizations that he could look to for help with having issues that were specifically related, some of them, to gender. Maybe he might not have blown up like this. Maybe if there was a forum, a place where he could have gone to and had out his dysfunction, had out his all of his internal breakdown there, without acting out violently, and he could have had some guidance instead of being in conflict with a movement that is constantly under attack. Maybe this would not have happened. And yet here we have feminists who are trying to use it to shut down what could have helped them.
Oh, definitely.
I actually, I had a feminist describe to me why the not all men thing is really offensive and really a bad and derailing argument when somebody counters yes all women with yeah but not all men are like that. They said that equality, fighting for equality is fighting for equality, but women have 2 gallons in their barrel and men have 8 gallons in their barrel, and so until women have 8 gallons in their barrel, then doing anything positive for men in any way just increases inequality. That was literally the explanation, which is literally a description of a zero-sum game. That if you do anything for men, you are necessarily taking away from women.
Yeah.
So, including getting men mental health that could help prevent these kinds of tragedies.
Of course. Anything. Especially if he's a white man, or a straight man, or a cisgendered man.
Okay.
What's really dumb about that is that both genders do have 8 gallons in their barrel. It's just that maybe men have 8 gallons of beer and women have 8 gallons of wine.
Yeah, I wish I had 8 gallons of wine, but...
and then there's feminists, and they have the other kind of wine, and they've got enough of that.
No, they got 8 gallons of poison Kool-Aid, is what they got.
Okay. I sense that we're going...
with an H.
I guess I'm sensing we're going towards the silly place, and we have a lot of callers, and people who are not even getting in the... No. So thank you, Samich, and let's bring Michael on. James, can you get Michael on? Can you reel him in for us?
Yes, I can. I'm working it right now.
Okay.
All right, there
Michael.
he is.
Hello, Michael.
Hello.
Hi.
I am one of the founders and a director of a small men's rights organization in northeastern Tennessee called Men's Advocacy in Action, and we have our most successful project so far has been a lecturing circuit that we do in tandem with some law enforcement here on lecturing to young men and boys about sexual assault and domestic violence. And it's a male-safe zone. We make a male-safe space for them in that. And some of the stories that are coming out from this, talking to these young men, actually giving them a place where they feel safe to talk about it, it's really scary what we're hearing. And I'm afraid that, this Elliot Roger situation may just be the first that we're hearing about these men's, what's going on. It is absolutely terrifying, the stories that we're getting about how these young men are being treated in society, how the problems that they're facing are being totally overlooked and hidden. Earlier on, you were talking about rape culture. There is a rape culture in this country, and it is against men and boys. The stories that we have told, or the stories that I've heard personally from young men in the millennial generation is terrifying.
Oh, I can imagine. Yeah. And they're told that they're lucky, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Or told not to tell anyone.
Yeah.
I mean, before we go on, can we get a link to your organization? Could you spell out a link to your organization for us?
Currently, we're not on the web. We made the decision very early on to keep ourselves off the internet for as long as possible, simply because we didn't want any form of pushback from social justice warriors. We didn't want feminists to know what we were. Because, it may, like I said, we're from northeastern Tennessee, so we're coming from a very conservative area, but at the same time, on the internet, you're not dealing with people from your area, you're dealing with people from all over the world. And the second that they catch wind of something like this, they want to go after it. So we have decided, in a meeting just last week, we have decided that we are going to start a homepage where we can start talking about open forums and start, giving links, simply because so many mothers, we've had a lot of fathers attend. We've had 6 lectures so far. We've had about 200 people show up to those lectures, men and fathers. We always invite fathers or men to come with their sons to these. And now we're getting a lot of feedback from mothers who want to come to lectures because the husbands and the sons are going home and telling them what they've heard, and the mothers want to hear it too. Simply because they don't believe it. That's the universal that we're hearing. They don't believe that this stuff is going on. The mothers don't.
I can understand how you wouldn't understand how these things are going on. It's you would actually have to have things going on right under your nose and have no idea that they're there. And, because we're not programmed to see that kind of thing, right? We have no hardwiring to acknowledge or see it or be repulsed by it. So
right. And when it does happen, so many people immediately try to hush it up with young men. We had a young man who was told a story who was corroborated by several of the other young men that were there. He was a cross-country athlete, and he was sexually assaulted by 3 females who put him in the hospital. They attacked his genitalia so savagely they nicked a blood vessel.
Wow. Actually, that kind of dovetails with that recent study on sexual coercion and sexual assault and aggression among young people by the Journal of the American Medical Association that found that girls are more likely than boys to be sexually aggressive in groups, to act as a gang. Yeah.
3 young women assaulted him. He was a sophomore in high school. 3 young women assaulted him in the dressing room after a practice and put him in the hospital.
Good grief.
What's astounding to me is that I don't want to use the word opponents, but ideological opponents don't realize how absolutely morally bankrupt they are if an organization like you has to hide, like that you represent has to hide yourself because these social justice warriors are going to go after you and try to shut you down. And what you're doing is you're helping people in pain. How can these people think that they're on the side of the light or the right? Like,
well, you have so many of these social justice profiteers today. These people like Lacey, Show Me Your Tits Green, and Anita Scargesian, and all these women who are acting like that they're profiteering from it. And that's what so many people don't understand. They're making money from this. They don't care. Right. They don't care about what they're spewing. It's all rhetoric to them. Right. If they did, they would have a little empathy of what's causing these things to happen, not just, look, it's all men, they're all evil. Well, everybody knows, anyone with half a brain knows that's silly. But nobody seems to want to call them down for it because they're little girls and we can't be mean to little girls.
Yeah. Well, they're not little girls. They are women, and they need to women the fuck up. Woman the fuck up.
Lacey Green's a 23-year-old who claims to be a sex education.
That's ridiculous.
Oh, don't get me started.
But this is
23. She doesn't even know what good sex is yet, and she's going to sit here and tell us about it.
Yeah,
anyway. That's my point on Lacey Green.
Yeah, let's not get this too off topic because we do have other callers. But I wanted to thank you so much for calling in and talking about your organization and the stuff that you've been dealing with. You're really doing great work, and I appreciate it.
I definitely appreciate it too, and I hope to be able to link you guys something. I think I follow you all on YouTube, so I will link you something as soon as we get a page up, just so you can see some of the stuff that we're dealing with. Currently, we're doing a fundraiser for scholarships, legal scholarships for hopeful lawyers who will be standing up for men's rights.
Mm-hmm. Well, when you feel ready, please drop us a link through our website. That's the easiest thing to remember is just www.honeybadgerbrigade.com. We have a contact form on the website. It can be a little tricky to do, but please, when you feel ready, drop us a link to your services, and we'll do something to publish them and make sure people know about it if you want us to. That is.
We certainly will. Thank you so very much.
Yeah, but we do have to move on, and thanks again for your call. James, can we bring...
Weode. Yes.
Okay.
Weode. Yeah, we're going to bring Weode on. Give me just 1 second here.
Sure.
Welcome to the show.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Welcome.
All right. Well, one interesting thing I've been hearing about a lot with this topic, I guess from the feminist side, is how this is supposed to be some sort of issue of male entitlement. And it's very bizarre because these are the same people who complain if, like, a guy says he doesn't like, for example, like a woman with hairy armpits, he's somehow like attacking women because of that. They feel like they're entitled to have men desire them or something. It's just bizarre that these people think that the problem here is that men are too entitled to feel like they deserve sex or something.
Well, one of the arguments I used was, what is the argument or the whole movement against the so-called beauty industry, but a sense of entitlement to be attractive? Because if women are not entitled to be attractive or to be made to feel attractive, they're not entitled to have other people be attracted to them, then what's their complaint about the beauty industry? I mean, it's totally illegitimate because it's entirely based on the idea that women are entitled to be attractive. The beauty industry does not owe you making you feel attractive. Men don't owe you making you feel attractive. Nobody owes you being attracted to you. So your complaints about the beauty industry are entirely entitlement. And that was an argument I used with some feminists. They never had a response to that. The idea that women do express entitlement to feel attractive to men, and then they shame men for not finding them attractive. They call them lookist. They say they're shallow or immoral. And they do other, emotional bullying to try to extort someone, making them feel attractive, which you really can't extort. And it is entitlement. So yeah, I agree with you, Weod. Sorry about your name's so odd.
But look at the whole, look at the whole real men like women with curves thing. All those memes that go up on Facebook. And the worst one, I saw one that was horrible. It had it had a curvy lady and a woman who most people would probably look at her and say she was probably anorexic. She looked like maybe she had health condition of some sort. She was definitely clinically underweight. And under the curvy lady, it said, "This is fit," and under the underweight lady, it said, "This is shit." And it was obvious they just thought it was funny to make a rhyme and make their point at the same time. But the level of entitlement in that, was so much of, I have the right to feel attractive no matter how I look, so big, that I can stomp on everybody else. I can stomp on men's feelings, I can stomp on women's feelings, the thin ladies' feelings, everybody. Because you're never allowed to judge me for how I look. It's entitlement.
But even though we're not allowed to judge Elliot Roger because he was mentally ill, because that stigmatizes the people who are mentally ill, right? We can say this is shit to women who apparently suffer from bulimia or anorexia.
Oh yeah, it gets said all the time. I've been when I was younger, I was much thinner. I was clinically underweight myself due to metabolism issues, and I was targeted with that a lot. Quite a bit of bullying for being thin.
Well, part of the reason why I mentioned sort of entitlement is because that really is their solution. They believe that like demonizing men somehow will stop them from shooting people or something. That is like their only answer to this, is that men are too entitled. But I don't know, like, I'm not sure if maybe this is something like a matter of chance, like, there's going to be crazy people who do crazy things, or, part of it might also be that our psychology industry or whatever just doesn't know how to really deal with men that well. Because, that could be one of the reasons why you just see more men killing themselves. The psychology is not able to help them. And the reason why I bring that up is because I saw an interesting video by Paul Elam about, how the psychological industry seems to really like to demonize men,
It does. And on top of that, psychology is predominantly female now. Clinical psychologists are mostly women. Practicing ones who see patients, and on top of that, like all of the humanities and the social sciences, psychology has been infiltrated and colonized by feminism. So you literally have people, even if it was mostly men, taking psychology right now. They would be being indoctrinated. They would have to take one mandatory women's studies course to make their requirements to graduate. They literally the entirety of the soft sciences are infested with feminist ideology and feminist theory. So it's not a friendly place. The psychology industry is not a friendly place for men. It just isn't.
I actually do have something to say to that, and I'll make it as brief as I can. For several years, I was involved as a witness in a case of malicious prosecution over false allegations. It was actually a custody battle where the ex-wife was using false allegations to try to win custody back after abuse that was perpetrated by her new husband. But one of the other witnesses in that case was so affected by the ridiculousness in the system and the pain and suffering that the victim went through, and learning about other victims that she wanted to go into becoming a therapist so that she could become a men's therapist, an abused men's therapist. And over the last 4 years, she's been in school for 4 years. Over the last 4 years, her outlook and her attitude have very slowly devolved to the point where by the time she graduated, she was openly embracing feminism. She was blaming all of the things that we saw happen in the case on toxic masculinity. We had originally talked about trying to start a men's shelter in our home area. She's actually moved away and abandoned the idea, and it's flat out not possible to do by myself. And so it was all these things that she was being told in school. It wasn't, I don't think, just a women's studies class or a gender studies class or even several gender studies classes. It permeated the entire curriculum. Everything she took was geared from a feminist standpoint, and she bought it.
It's got to be awfully hard to not buy it when it's all you hear.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you guys. We do have to move on. Let's play the rant. And this particular rant is by Mike, who's otherwise known as Dr. Randercan, and it is when to get defensive. So James, can you cue that up?
Yes, I can, and we thank you for calling in.
A couple of rules of thumb that are good to follow are don't get too aggressive and don't get too defensive. Like, don't feel like you need to defend the MRM from every mad thing everyone says about it. Just state your goals and stick to the agenda. But there comes a time where how can you not get defensive? How can you not get aggressive in that defense? Men's rights is now a boogeyman. That means a foreskin is a boogeyman. Fatherhood is a boogeyman. If you want to prevent babies from being legally mutilated and abandoned and abused, there is nothing you can call yourself but a misogynist. And now, post Elliot Roger, there is nothing you can call yourself but a misogynistic mass murderer. You want your son's foreskin back? There's only one group who can help you. The League of Misogynistic Mass Murderers. Have you ever heard the term incel? Short for involuntary celibate? Didn't think so. There's MRAs, there's MGTOWs, there's PUAs. There's no such thing as an incel. They made it up. Because it sounds like a term that no one in their right mind would make up. It sounds like a cult of angry virgins. They call themselves Aksungs, the accidentally hungry. Beware the Aksungs. Yeah, no, that's not what people do when they're fighting for human rights. Fighting to survive, fighting to parent, to not be mutilated and to not be unfairly imprisoned. They don't call themselves poppy little labels like Radfem. They don't call themselves anything. They just advocate human rights. A suffragette used to be a negative term, but thanks to public opinion it became synonymous with women's rights advocate. A men's rights advocate, perhaps, used to be a positive term, but thanks to public opinion it became synonymous with misogynist. I repeat, Webster did not do this. Samuel Johnson did not do this. Public opinion did this. The state system in which we live considers the human rights of men to be synonymous with hate, because that's what the people want. The mob has spoken. The patriarchy has spoken. And it has told us that to be masculine is to hate. We in the men's rights movement find this situation unsettling, and we are here to say so.
Thank you, Mike, for that insightful rant. And now we're going to bring KO onto the deck. And maybe we can get some music from Rachel while we do that. Perhaps some singing.
No,
not enough time.
Folks, we've got them on. KO, okay. Welcome to the show.
Okay, I think that this might be a troll or someone who's having some extreme difficulties with his or her computer. So let's move on. Let's move on to M.
All right. We will go to M.
Yep. And in the meantime,
M,
here we go.
welcome to the show.
Hello, M.
Well, hello, guys. Thanks
Hi.
for having me.
You're welcome.
Hey there.
Can y'all actually hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Awesome. Ladies, friends, Romans, countrymen, Canadians, well, I will need to make clear that the Elliot Roger guy is nothing to do with the manosphere. He is a classic narcissist. That statement by itself should be clear. He had nothing to do. He was just looking for rationalization and justification for what he did. His rationalization and justification for what he did is that he is a narcissist. The banana didn't evolve to fit in your hand evolved to grasp things. Narcissists were not created by the manosphere. Narcissists found the manosphere. I hope this is clear.
Well, it's clear to me. I think it's clear to anybody who's really thinking about the issue. And thank you for that. Thank you for that insight.
It's even clear to some writers on mainstream media that really there's no connection there other than maybe an incidental one. So, yeah.
Anyway, thank you.
Well, no, I just wanted to make that clear. Ladies, I really enjoy y'all. We're talking about a lot of stuff for the last 30, 45 minutes, and I wanted to comment on the thesis of my call that this Elliot Rogers guy is clearly a narcissist. Clearly, who's bordered into sociopathy, who's bordered into psychopathy. He clearly, we, you, us, nothing to do with it.
All right, thank you for calling in, Em. Your sound is coming through bad. We're going to go ahead and let you go and move on.
No, that's fine.
All right, thank you again, Em. We are going to move on to Emmerich.
Yep, we're gonna bring Emmerich on.
That's a lovely name.
Yes. Hello, Emmerich.
Emmerich, welcome to the show.
Yeah, hi everyone. First, I would like to point the fact that in modern society, the very fact of being a man has become some sort of social crime. This boy, Elliot Roger, who was clearly some sort of lunatic with issues, as you girls said before, couldn't be more criminalized by pointing out that he indeed was a man. The idea is that now as a man, whatever you do in society, you become some sort of suspected criminal. You were talking earlier about the problem with skinny girls, with fat girls. As a man, if you have a thing for skinny girls, you're some sort of slave of the patriarchy and some sort of evil monkey, evil boogeyman. And if you're a man and you actually tend to have a thing for big girls, you end up being a chubby chaser, as feminists say. So the fact is that having this criminalization on men is making is a sort of feminist strategy, and I really hope it's not a conscious strategy. It's become some sort of strategy to criminalize everything men do. So basically, defending men, as Honey Badger Brigade and A Voice for Men does, and many men's rights groups are doing all over Europe, where I am, or all over the United States or Canada, is becoming easily set aside as some sort of hate group, basically because it defends men. The fact of defending men has become something that's actually defending monsters or potential criminals.
I would agree with that. I would 100% agree with what you're saying. One of the things that really gets me about this whole idea that Elliot Roger and what he did was caused by sort of a pervasive culture of male entitlement, every single bit of rhetoric that I've heard from feminists, from Lacey Green to some no-name, I can only call her a bimbo, because that's about how bright she was, on YouTube, and all of these articles, which are factually and mathematically highly improbable in mainstream media, it almost all boils down to the fact that the mere act of a man just wanting, right, is entitlement, right? A man who wants a relationship with a woman, who wants sexual intimacy with a woman, who wants that very human drive to want something like that, right? That's an entitlement to women's bodies, right? That, let's put aside Elliot Roger for a moment, and let's just take any other creepy guy. Let's just assume Elliot Roger hadn't done anything, right? He had only put up his videos saying, it's really unfair that no woman has ever been attracted to me. It's really unfair, and I'm really angry at women for not being attracted to me. I'm the perfect gentleman, I'm the supreme gentleman, and you go for all of these douchebags who treat you like shit, right? And yet I am the man that you say that you want, and you don't want me, right? And the mere act of him saying that is somehow a crime against women, right? The mere act of him wanting when he's unworthy is a crime against women. I mean, exactly. The entire thing is just, it's absolutely, this is where you get into these freaky concepts like male gaze rape, like eye rape, stare rape, things like that. He's assaulting a woman just by looking at her, right?
Yep.
One of the Yes All Women tweets was, here's to never having to hear a man tell a woman to smile like ever again.
Yeah,
right?
It's pretty trivial, isn't it? But
it's not just trivial. It's like how dare you feel entitled to my completely superficial and banal expression of human connectivity, right?
Yeah,
it's my acknowledgement of you as a human being.
It's entitlement to say that men should only exist when women choose to let them, and then their mentality. But let's Rachel get a word in edgewise, and then we'll move on to the next caller.
Yeah,
go ahead, Rachel.
I think it goes even deeper than just that. It's not just that he's a man. It's they really tried to push that he was a white man, even though he's biracial. He's of Malaysian descent. He's been raised for most of his life by his Malaysian mother, and yet in the media he has to be portrayed as, of course, a white MRA. And that just lets us know that this is the ultimate demonic monster in the eyes of the media. That this is the epitome of evil right now in modern media.
Because, hey,
because
this just in, a White House petitioning the Obama administration to classify feminism as a mental illness.
Oh, that's beautiful.
I suggest everybody go and sign that forthwith, and let's see what happens.
Awesome. Oh gosh.
Sorry, I just received that, so I had to blurt it out.
But like I was saying, it doesn't fit their narrative. He doesn't fit this angry white man mold. So they're just going to force him into it. And that's what they've done with every multiracial killer that comes up in the media, or even, remember the Virginia Tech killer? He was Asian, and nobody ever talks about him because he doesn't fit the evil white man mold. He doesn't fit that narrative that they tried.
What's amazing to me is that there was a feminist on Policy Mike who wrote an article quoting Michael Kimmel as saying 90% of all school shooters in the U.S. have been white men, right? When in reality it's been about 80%, which is about the percentage of whites in the general population, and the only demographic that is overrepresented among school shooters compared to their percentage of the general population is Asians, right? Blacks are underrepresented, right? And this is going by something like 22 cases altogether, because those are the only cases that we know enough about to really, have all of this information, right? It's such a small sample size that you can't make any judgments about blacks or Asians or whites or anybody. But there is no indication that white males are any more likely to go on a shooting spree in a school than anybody else.
Nope, there isn't any indication.
But it's all about white male rage.
And let's thank M for calling in and bring on Toots. James, can you...
Yeah, I can do that right now. Give me just one
Reel
second.
them in.
Yep. Here we go.
Hello, Toots.
Oh, hello there.
Hey!
Am I on?
Yes,
you
are.
Oh, okay. I was listening to this show. I didn't realize that you got this far. Okay, well, it's great to be on the show. And I want to bring something to your attention that I think is going to knock your socks off. You were talking about Valerie Solanas earlier. The thing that apparently a lot of people don't realize is that she was actually avowedly embraced by feminism after shooting Andy Warhol. For example, Robin Morgan, who later on became the editor of Ms. Magazine, demonstrated for Solanas' release from prison. Ty Grace Atkinson, the New York chapter president of the National Organization of Women, described Solanas as, quote, the first outstanding champion of women's rights, unquote, and also called her a, quote, heroine of the feminist movement, unquote. And on top of that, another feminist named Florence Kennedy called her, quote, one of the most important spokeswomen of the feminist movement. So there you go. So while this guy Rogers had absolutely nothing to do with the men's human rights movement, Valerie Solanas was actually a hero to prominent feminists at the actual time.
What I found the most interesting about that was that the feminists of the day embraced her, but she saw them as, how did she put it, a civil disobedience luncheon club. They were nowhere near as... she didn't like them. She thought they weren't into it enough. And another thing that a lot of people, because I just actually had a feminist say to me, she tried to kill Andy Warhol because she was mentally ill and because he stole her screenplay or her I guess her play, right?
Right.
That he stole it or he lost it or whatever that she'd worked so hard on. He refused to produce it because it was so pornographic it would have gotten him put in jail. But the person that she set out to kill that day was not Andy Warhol, and it was not anyone that she actually shot that day. It was her agent. Oh God, what was his name? Something French.
Oh gosh, I can't remember it right now. It was
but she thought that she had actually, when he bought the rights to the Scum Manifesto, he basically offered her a contract that included a right of first refusal, right? Which would mean that she would have to bring anything else that she wrote that was even remotely similar to him first, and then he could offer for it. She could refuse, or she could negotiate, or he could refuse and say, I don't want to publish it, right? And it might delay the process of her getting that published by about 6 months, right? But she thought that right of first refusal meant that he owned the rights to all of her future work, right? Like, so she literally was not just mentally ill, she was mind-blowingly stupid about the publishing industry, right? And then she set out to kill this guy, right? And he wasn't at his office, so she went after Andy Warhol instead.
Right. But the thing that really blows my mind is that feminists openly cheered her on.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. She was paranoid schizophrenic.
And they cheered Lorena Bobbitt on. They were passing out buttons at her trial, nominating her for Surgeon General. Serving cocktail weenies slathered in ketchup, right?
Right.
Here's a little-known story. Here's a little-known story about Valerie Solanas. She actually, in conversation with people that knew her over the phone, she would tell them about how she believed that the government had planted tracking devices in her uterus, and she actually tried to remove them by stabbing herself with a fork.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
She was completely nutty. There's no question that she was completely fucking insane, right? But feminists embraced her, right? Feminists who still had a career afterwards, right? Who still had a fucking career and who still are respected. Robin Morgan is still respected.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they still have a career even after embracing this violent lunatic. But this is we're coming into the end of the final stretch of the show. So I wanted to thank you, Toots, for calling in. That was some great content to bring to us and bring to our attention. And it's certainly quite the double standard that feminists are allowed to embrace this crazy homicidal person and just revel in it and not get any censure for it. It's really unbelievable. So thanks again for calling in. And I wanted to end with something that's a little bit different, just to maybe have a bit of a more positive note before we sign off on this very negative chapter in the men's rights. Although you know what, it'll pass. We will keeping on, and eventually, people like this, they have a short memory, and we'll just keeping on. So, Hannah, did you want to bring Jess K's review in and have a read of it?
Sure. This is a review of Dr. Wolf by Jess K. With a 2-year-old in the house, I'm sure it is easily understood that we watch a lot of Disney Junior. Like, a lot. Those with young children may be aware that Disney Junior has recently introduced a new show to their lineup called Sheriff Callie's Wild West. The show presents the Wild West to young kids while teaching them manners and other basic lessons like telling the truth, helping others, and, the topic of this review, not judging based on appearance. In an episode titled Peck's Bent Beak, Deputy Peck, a woodpecker, winds up with a bent beak that requires some help from the dentist, Dr. Wolf. Unfortunately, Dr. Wolf lives in another town, so they have to wait for him to travel to nice and friendly corners where the cast resides. Some of the townfolk decide to stand on the lookout for Dr. Wolf. However, when Dr. Wolf arrives, they do not realize that he is the dentist and has come to repair Deputy Peck's beak. Dr. Wolf asks around looking for Deputy Peck, stating that he needs to get his hands on him and fix him good. The townsfolk proceed to run and hide in fear of what they perceive to be a scary-looking wolf, informing Deputy Peck that the wolf is after him and singing a song about a scary-looking wolf in town. Eventually, Sheriff Callie encounters Dr. Wolf, who she is familiar with and recognizes, and they set the record straight, informing the townsfolk that he is Dr. Wolf, the dentist who has come to fix Deputy Peck's bent beak. In between scenes, 3 little prairie dogs sing a short jingle recapping the storyline. In one scene, Ella Cowbell runs from Dr. Wolf in fear, and the prairie dogs sing, "Wait a minute, Ella, things aren't what they seem. The wolf looks big and scary, but that don't mean he's mean." This struck me as an apt analogy for the way men are viewed in society, especially in light of the recent shooting tragedy. Men are viewed as bloodthirsty monsters whose goal is to terrorize and harm women, despite the fact that the majority of men exist to help, protect, and care for women.
Yeah, I thought that would be a nicer note to end on. And the fact that if we had the people who write stories for children teach gender studies, it would be an improvement.
Be good to get them to help teach journalism, too.
Yeah. Appearances aren't always, they aren't always the truth. And it was interesting how that sort of tied into the situation now, and it's a little bit more of a lighter look at it, and how it's unfair that's essentially what feminism is creating. It's creating a situation where we're judging men by the simple fact that they are 20% bigger than women, and that we're damning them for it for the rest of eternity. then we're also basing our beliefs on women's oppression on the idea that on that small difference. I mean, it's not like that small, but it is. I mean, if you think about it, it really doesn't justify our beliefs about men oppressing women throughout history, or turning him into the big bad scary wolf. But I'm going to open it up now to anybody who wants to make a final quick comment on the subject matter or Jess K's review. Go ahead.
Well, I guess my take on this is that it's really hypocritical of feminists to do this. And their argument that they give every single time anything about criticism or anything about feminism is criticized is not all feminists are like that. Feminism isn't the cause of that because not all feminists are like that. And it doesn't matter what the thing is, whether it's, Valerie Solanas shooting Andy Warhol or the National Organization for Women are advocating against fathers' rights by demonizing all fathers as deadbeats and abusers. It's not all feminists are like that. So here they have a guy who isn't even a fit. He doesn't actually, he's not actually a men's rights advocate. He doesn't do anything or didn't do anything with the men's rights movement. May have read a few things that he didn't like and actually criticized. And they have to translate his behavior, his end behavior, the murder and everything, to the entire men's rights movement. So it's entirely hypocritical. And that's all I've got to say on it. That's the last I've got to say on it.
I think it's tragic that they're trying to actually portray him as a garden variety misogynist on steroids. They're trying to portray him as just another man. It is not him and his pathology, right? And his envy of everybody, including his little brother, who he was planning on killing so he would never show him up, right? Would never be able to outcompete him, right? It had nothing to do with this extremely narcissistic persecution complex that he had, which I might add resembles a lot of what I hear in feminist rhetoric, but not enough time to go there. But that they will try and take this person who is seriously messed up and say this is just normalized masculinity taken to the extreme, right? This is his misogyny is the culture's misogyny, right? And his entitlement is the culture's entitlement. And, that this is male culture, right? Just as it is in its purest form. It's obscene. It's an obscene form of bigotry, right? To say that this man and everything that he did was just a result of masculinity. And the ones who are not blaming the MRM, and a lot of them who are blaming the MRM, are simply blaming the pervasive culture of misogyny and male entitlement to women's bodies and objectification of women, the pervasive objectification of women by men, right? They are blaming what they perceive as normal, pervasive male behaviors for something that is an extreme act that happens 0.65 times a year in the U.S., right? In the U.S., a country with millions of guns, right? 0.65 times a year in the U.S. it happens.
It's taking a lightning strike and saying that's every rainstorm is defined by it. But Rachel, did you have anything you wanted to add at all? Very quick.
Well, like I said before, this is just letting us know media bias, and if there's a silver lining, it's letting us know the full extent of it and how deeply ingrained it is within the media.
Yep. And Crystal, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I was talking to some guys who were feeling pretty down about everything they've been going through and this coming up and, this being used. So I and they were also saying they wanted to do more for the the MHRM. But what I say is, just take care of you through this and whatever, you're going through, because you are the reason for this movement. So take care of you and, just be well.
Yeah, those are very wise words.
Yeah,
you can't
take care
do anything.
of everybody.
Yeah, you can't do anything if you don't take care of yourself first. And I mean, what I find amazing, my last words, is that we can't judge feminism by a crazed murderer who some feminists have embraced without any kind of censure, but we can judge all of the men's rights movement by a crazed murderer who didn't even identify as a men's rights activist and is not categorically denied by all of us, and we don't want to have anything to do with him. But with that, we are at the end of the show. I would like to thank my co-hosts, in particular, Judgy Bitch, otherwise known as Janet Bloomfield, for coming on for the first hour. She wasn't able to stay after that, but it's good to have her on she always lightens up the show. And Hannah Wallen, Rachel Edwards, Crystal Garcia, Karen Strawn, our producer, James Huff, and all of the people behind the scenes, Yule, Mike, Europa, Phil, who does our animations, and everybody who helps to make this show what it is and make it possible. And of course, to our audience, thank you for listening to us and also for supporting us. And if you've come this far, please consider coming a little farther with us and helping us out in terms of our finances. You can, if you want to support the show, if you want to see more content like this, if you want to see us be able to bring this content to more people, consider giving a donation to www.honeybadgerbrigade.com. Or if you have trouble doing a donation through our website, you can also donate to us directly at honeybadgersradio@gmail.com. That's honeybadgersradio@gmail.com. All donations are very much appreciated, and again, it goes to producing more and making sure that this voice, which is one voice promoting the idea of real equality and compassion for men, gets heard further. So thanks and good night. Same Badger channel, same Badger time.
Like a furry torpedo to the jugular. This is Honey Badger Radio, radio with